Would you rather marry a woman you barely know just because you met her in a church in your village, or a city lady that you've known for a while? Obinna and his two closest friends, Emeka and Tunde, lounged in a popular bar on a quiet evening, laughing and sharing stories. Obinna, the most confident of the trio, leaned back in his chair with a smug smile. His tailored shirt and gold wristwatch glinted under the dim lights, a testament to his wealth and status. At 29, Obinna was the life of every gathering, a charming, wealthy bachelor who thrived on adventure and mischief. His friends often teased him for being too full of himself, but his natural charisma made it hard to stay mad at him for long. While the three of them laughed over a joke Tunde had cracked, Obinna's attention drifted to the other side of the bar. There, at a corner table, sat a young lady sipping a drink. She had smooth brown skin, her braided hair falling neatly over her shoulders. She wore a simple but elegant dress, and the way she carried herself suggested confidence and class. Obinna couldn't take his eyes off her. "Guys," Obinna said, tapping Emeka's shoulder. "Look at that lady over there. I bet I can toast her and she'll agree to date me." Tunde rolled his eyes. "Here we go again," he muttered under his breath. Emeka chuckled. "Obinna, must you make everything a bet? Besides, why bother? Everyone knows you'll succeed. You're Obinna after all, Mr. Charming himself." They all laughed. But Tunde raised his hand to make a point. Wait. Obinna, on a serious note, have you ever thought about slowing down? You can't keep living like this forever." "What do you mean?" Obinna asked, narrowing his eyes. "I mean this wayward lifestyle of yours," Tunde replied. "You're almost 30. All this chasing women, spending money recklessly. It's not sustainable. One day you'll want to settle down. Who's going to marry you then?" "You think a decent woman will take you seriously after all this?" Emeka nodded in agreement. "He has a point, bro. You can't play forever. Life doesn't work that way." Obinna leaned forward, his smile turning into a playful smirk. "You guys are worrying for nothing. I'm a man, and this is my time to enjoy. My looks, my money, my influence. None of that is going anywhere. When I'm ready to settle down, I'll just go to my village, find a good, decent girl in church and marry her. Easy." The table erupted in laughter. Even Tunde, despite his earlier seriousness, couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. "You think life is that simple, don't you?" he said. Obinna shrugged, lifting his glass. "It is for me. Cheers to that." Angela sat quietly on the wooden bench outside her parents' home in the village, her Bible resting on her lap. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes to feel the gentle breeze brush against her skin. Just a year ago, Angela's life had been in complete shambles. Back in Asaba, she had been a well-known runs girl, living a fast life filled with parties, expensive gifts, and dangerous habits. She had craved the attention and luxury her lifestyle brought, but beneath it all, she had been spiraling out of control. Her addiction to drugs had begun as a coping mechanism for the emptiness she felt, but had quickly consumed her. The overdose that led to her mental breakdown was the culmination of years of reckless decisions. For 2 agonizing years, Angela roamed the streets of Asaba in tattered clothes, her hair matted and her eyes distant. She had been a shadow of herself, begging for food and talking to herself while people who once knew her whispered in pity or scorn. Her parents had searched tirelessly for her, and when they finally found her, it was as though they had recovered a lost treasure. They took her to a rehabilitation center, where months of intense therapy and medical care brought her back to sanity. Now, Angela was determined to rebuild her life. She had made a vow to God during one of her lowest moments in rehab, promising to dedicate herself to him if she ever got well. True to her word, Angela had embraced her faith fully. She had joined the church choir and quickly become one of its most dedicated members. Obinna leaned back in his plush leather sofa, a glass of wine in his hand, while Emeka, his closest friend, flipped through a sports channel on the TV. The two had been friends since their university days and often shared everything from business ideas to tales of their escapades. Today, however, Emeka had some unexpected news. "Obinna," Emeka began, setting the remote control down. "I've been meaning to tell you something important." "What's that?" Obinna asked, raising an eyebrow as he sipped his wine. Emeka grinned. "I'm getting married." The glass in Obinna's hand almost slipped as he turned to face his friend fully. "Wait, what? Married? To who?" "To Grace," Emeka said, his face lighting up. "You've met her before. She's the one I told you about months ago. We've been planning it quietly and it's finally happening in 3 months. Obinna clapped his hands and laughed. "My guy, congratulations. I didn't think you had it in you. So, you finally decided to leave the streets, eh?" Emeka chuckled. "Yes, bro. It's time. Grace is a good woman and I know she'll make a great wife. You, on the other hand," he said, pointing at Obinna, "you need to start thinking about settling down too. You can't keep hopping from one babe to another forever." Obinna shrugged nonchalantly. "I've told you before. When I'm ready, I'll go to my village and find a decent wife in the church. No stress. Those Lagos babes are not for me." "Obinna, life isn't as simple as you think," Emeka said, shaking his head. "But I hope you're serious about this. The earlier you start thinking about your future, the better." Obinna laughed, brushing off the advice. "Relax, my guy. By the end of this month, I'll be in the village. Watch me come back with the perfect wife." True to his word, the first stop he made upon arriving was the priest's house. Father Benedict, the elderly priest, welcomed Obinna with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Papo Biena, it's good to see you again. It's been so long," Father Benedict said, motioning for him to sit. "Father, it's great to see you too," Obinna replied, settling into a wooden chair. "I came back to the village with a purpose. I'm ready to settle down and get married. I want to find a good wife here in the church." Father Benedict's face lit up with joy. "That's wonderful news, Obinna. Marriage is a sacred institution and I'm glad you're taking this step. Pray about it, my son. Take your time, observe, and God will guide you to the right person." Obinna nodded confidently. "Thank you, Father, I will." The following Sunday, Obinna arrived at the village church much earlier than he had in years. He wanted to make a good impression and begin his mission with a fresh start. The church compound was quiet, with only the sound of birds chirping and the soft rustle of the morning breeze. As he sat on a bench near the entrance, adjusting his crisp native attire, he noticed a young lady sweeping the church premises with quiet dedication. It was Angela. She moved gracefully, her braided hair tied back neatly. She hummed a soft tune as she worked, a melody that carried a sense of peace and devotion. Obinna watched her from a distance, curious but unsure why he felt so drawn to her. She was dressed modestly in a simple gown, but there was an air of dignity about her that captivated. When the church bell rang and service began, Obinna followed the congregation into the building and took a seat near the back. To his surprise, Angela was at the front, leading the Sunday school session for the youth. Her voice was calm and confident, her words filled with wisdom beyond her years. The children listened intently, hanging on to every word she said. Obinna couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something about her presence that made him feel both intrigued and comforted. He didn't say a word to her that day, though. Instead, he returned home, her image etched in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was different from anyone he had ever met. By Wednesday, Obinna had made up his mind to attend the midweek service. Once again, he arrived early, hoping to observe Angela without drawing too much attention to himself. Sure enough, she was there, this time helping the elderly find their seats and assisting children to settle in. Angela's kindness was evident in her every action. She spoke softly to an elderly woman who seemed to be struggling with her walking stick, then crouched down to tie the shoelaces of a little boy who had tripped on his way inside. She moved with such natural ease, her actions speaking louder than any words could. Obinna was deeply impressed. Her dedication and humility reminded him of the type of wife he had always envisioned, a woman with a good heart, someone who would bring peace and stability into his life. As the service ended, Obinna decided to stay back and observe her a little longer, watching how she interacted with the other members of the church. He wanted to approach her, but something held him back. One Sunday after service, Obinna waited until most of the congregation had left before he approached Father Benedict. his face a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Father?" Obinna began, clearing his throat. Father Benedict smiled. "Ah, Obinna, how are you, my son? You've been very faithful in attending services lately. What can I do for you?" Obinna hesitated for a moment, then spoke with conviction. "Father, I believe I've found my wife." Father Benedict raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "Oh, who is this fortunate woman?" Obinna smiled shyly. "It's Angela, the choir member. I've been observing her for weeks now, and I just know she's the one. She's everything I've prayed for. Humble, kind, and God-fearing." The priest nodded thoughtfully. "Angela is indeed a wonderful young woman. But have you spoken to her about this?" "No, Father," Obinna admitted. "I didn't want to approach her directly without seeking your counsel first." Father Benedict smiled approvingly. "That's good, my son. Let me arrange a meeting between the two of you. But remember, marriage is a serious commitment, and you must be sure you're ready to honor it." "I'm ready, Father," Obinna said firmly. A few days later, Father Benedict arranged a private meeting at the church. Angela, though surprised by the priest's invitation, agreed to attend. When Obinna explained his intentions, Angela was both flattered and impressed by his sincerity. With the matter settled, the next step was to inform their families. Both families were thrilled with the news. Obinna's parents, proud of their son's decision to marry a church-going woman, spared no expense in planning a grand wedding. Angela's parents, overjoyed to see their daughter start a new chapter, gave their blessings wholeheartedly. The wedding was a magnificent celebration. The church was adorned with colourful flowers, and the choir, led by Angela's close friends, filled the hall with beautiful hymns. Obinna couldn't take his eyes off Angela as she walked down the aisle, her radiant smile lighting up the room. After the ceremony, Obinna and Angela returned to Lagos as husband and wife. Their arrival was met with excitement from Obinna's friends and neighbours, who welcomed Angela warmly. Despite the fast-paced city life, Angela quickly adjusted, dedicating herself to creating a happy home. Within a few months, their joy multiplied when Angela discovered she was pregnant. The news was met with celebration, and Obinna, who had never imagined himself as a father so soon, found himself eagerly preparing for the arrival of their child. He attended every doctor's appointment with Angela, doting on her and ensuring she had everything she needed. When their daughter was born, it was a moment of pure joy. She had Angela's warm brown eyes and Obinna's sharp features, a perfect blend of both parents. They named her Chisom, meaning God is with me, as a reminder of how far they had both come. Holding his baby girl for the first time, Obinna felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. Angela, cradling Chisom in her arms, looked at Obinna with gratitude. "God has been so good to us," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Yes, he has," Obinna replied, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. 2 years into their marriage, life was going smoothly for Obinna and Angela. Their daughter, Chisom, was growing into a bubbly and energetic toddler who brought endless joy to their home. Angela had settled well into her role as a wife and mother, and Obinna was thriving in his career. Then came the day that would change everything. Obinna returned home from work with a wide grin plastered on his face, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. Angela, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner, heard his excited voice from the living room. "Nah, guess what?" he called out. Angela walked into the room, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "What is it, Obinna? You're glowing like someone who just won the lottery." Obinna chuckled, unable to contain his excitement. "Not quite, but close. I've been promoted at work, and I'm being transferred to Asaba." Angela froze. The word Asaba echoed in her ears like a distant thunderclap. Her heart dropped, and the colour drained from her face. "Asaba," she repeated slowly, trying to mask the panic rising in her chest. "Yes," Obinna said, oblivious to her reaction. "They want me to oversee a new branch there. It's a big opportunity, Angela. More money, more prestige. This is what we've been praying for." Angela forced a smile, but her mind was racing. Asaba, the very place where her life had spiraled out of control years ago. The memories she had worked so hard to bury began to resurface. The parties, the drugs, the humiliation, and the 2 years she had spent roaming the streets like a madwoman. It was a place she had vowed never to return to, a place tied to the deepest shame of her past. That's great news, she said weakly, her voice trembling. But do we have to move? Can't you take the position and leave me in Chisholm here? We're settled in Lagos and I don't want to disrupt our daughter's routine. Obinna frowned, looking at her curiously. Angela, what are you saying? I don't want to live apart from my family. This promotion is for all of us, and I want you and Chisholm by my side. Angela's heart sank further. She knew there was no escaping it. Obinna was a family man, and he would never agree to leave her and Chisholm behind. Still, she tried to push back. But Lagos is our home. What if I don't adjust to Asaba? You will, Nene. It's just a change of environment, nothing to fear, Obinna said, brushing off her concerns. Besides, I need you there to support me. We'll make new memories in Asaba, I promise. With no other option, Angela finally nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She didn't know how she would face the ghosts of her pasts, but one thing was certain. The move to Asaba would force her to confront the very things she had spent years running away from. The evening of Obinna's welcoming party was grand. The hall was lavishly decorated, with chandeliers casting a warm glow over the crowd of well-dressed guests. Obinna, proud and full of gratitude, stood by Angela's side as he introduced her to his colleagues and superiors. Angela smiled politely, doing her best to maintain her composure, even though her heart raced with unease. She hadn't been able to shake the fear that her past might catch up with her in Asaba. As the night wore on, Obinna excused himself to speak with some senior executives, leaving Angela standing alone near the refreshments table. That was when it happened. A group of 3 well-dressed men entered the hall and immediately froze when they spotted Angela. One of them nudged the others and whispered, "Is that not Angela?" "It is." "Angela, long time," one of the men exclaimed loudly, walking toward her. Angela's heart sank. She quickly raised her hand in a subtle gesture, trying to signal them to keep quiet, but it was too late. "Angela, so you're back in Asaba? You just disappeared on us. We missed you," another man said, grinning. His tone was playful, but his words were heavy with implication. Before Angela could respond, Obinna returned to her side, catching the tail end of the conversation. He looked at the men, confused. "Do you know my wife?" The men, oblivious to the tension, laughed. "Your wife? Angela, this Angela. Ah, Oga, we didn't know she was married." Obinna's smile faded. "What do you mean by that? How do you know her?" The men exchanged awkward glances, realizing they had said too much. One of them tried to laugh it off. "Ah, no big deal, Oga. Angela used to be popular around here back in the day, but it's all in the past." Obinna's expression darkened. "Popular? What are you talking about?" Unable to contain their curiosity, other guests began to gather, and whispers filled the room. One of the men finally blurted, "Well, Oga, Angela was, quite the runs girl in Asaba. Everyone knew her back then, and didn't she go mad at some point? We heard she—" "Enough!" Angela shouted, tears streaming down her face. She turned to Obinna, who stared at her in disbelief. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Angela broke down, falling to her knees. "Yes, it's true, Obinna. But that was my old life. I've changed. I've given my life to Christ. I'm not that person anymore. Please, believe me." But Obinna stepped back, shaking his head. He couldn't process what he was hearing. "You should have told me," he said, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. "You should have told me the truth before I married you." Without another word, he left the party and drove back to Lagos that very night. There, he confided in his closest friends. Some mocked him, reminding him of his own wayward past and calling it kamma. Others pitied him, saying Angela's transformation deserved consideration. Now Obinna sits alone. Do you think Angela is between his love for his wife about and the betrayal he feels? Do you think that Father Benedict is at fault for not making proper investigation about Angela before matching them? What would you do in Obinna's situation? Leave us a comment and please subscribe to this channel. Thank you.